Welcome back everyone, and thanks for tuning in today as we dive into one of the most surprising, unbelievable, and captivating discoveries in the world of rare coins. And if you think you've already heard every story worth telling about wheat pennies, wartime cents, and minting mistakes, then get ready, because the journey we're about to take together reveals how a simple 1945 wheat penny, the kind most people overlook or spend without a second thought, is rumored in collector circles to be worth an astonishing $41 million due to a combination of mysterious errors, historical anomalies, minting accidents, and speculative possibilities that have captured the imaginations of collectors, experts, hobbyists, and treasure hunters for decades. And as we dig deep into every nook and cranny of what makes this particular coin so special, you might just find yourself rushing to check your own coin jars, drawers, old piggy banks, attic boxes, or forgotten coin rolls, because the story of this legendary 1945 wheat penny is not just about metal and mint marks, but about timing, mistakes, history, war, technology, scarcity, deliberate experimentation, accidental production, dramatic doubling, off-metal strikes, leftover planchets from previous wartime production, transitional errors, misaligned dies, misannealed planchets, striking pressure irregularities, ghost-like doubling, lamination cracks, and mysterious features that continue to spark debates, arguments, investigations, and dreams among people who hope that one day they too might find a coin that defies all expectations and rises to a value so astronomical that it changes their life forever. So let's get comfortable and draw ourselves deep into this almost unbelievable chain of events centered around the 1945 penny, minted in the final year of World War II, a time when the United States Mint was under extreme pressure, producing billions of coins for circulation while simultaneously dealing with fluctuating metal supplies, repurposed equipment, reused dies, wartime leftover planchets, emergency alloy changes, and production speed so intense that mistakes were not just possible but nearly impossible to avoid. And within this environment of hurried production and resource shortages, countless strange errors occurred, but only a tiny handful would ever reach the level of legendary rarity that pushes the potential value of a coin into the tens of millions. And the most extraordinary thing about the 1945 penny story is how multifaceted its alleged errors are, starting with the possibility of off-metal strikes created when leftover planchets from the 1943 steel cent production cycle remained in mint machinery, leading some experts to theorize that a small number of 1945 cents may have been struck on bronze-coated steel planchets or transitional alloy blends that were never intended for circulation. And because wartime operations were so chaotic, record-keeping was not always precise, allowing exceptional rarities to slip through. And even though most 1945 cents were produced in the standard bronze alloy, rumors have persisted for decades about a microbatch of experimental planchets used during a transitional moment when the mint was recalibrating equipment. And collectors argue that if even a single authenticated specimen struck on a leftover steel planchet or an unintended alloy exists, its value would explode beyond imagination, especially when paired with extreme doubling errors, die clashes, dramatic repunched mint marks, or misaligned die strikes, each of which has been documented in other coins of the era. And when you combine even half of those error possibilities into one single coin, you get something not just collectible but mythic, a once-in-a-lifetime mistake worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. And enthusiasts often reference the mysterious doubling phenomenon seen on some late-war coins, where the stress on mint machinery caused die fatigue, leading to bold doubling on the date, the motto, or Lincoln's portrait. And in some speculative 1945 examples, the doubling appears so dramatic that it almost looks like a ghostly second Lincoln emerging from beneath the first, giving the coin an eerie and unmistakable presence that instantly sets it apart visually from any normal cent. And when you pair this with potential off-metal composition, the value snowballs dramatically. And then comes the possibility of a 1945 wheat penny struck with the wrong die, such as a leftover 1944 die or even a die meant for early 1946 production, which could happen if dies were accidentally stored together or mistakenly reinstalled after being removed for inspection. And this rare, transitional die pairing has happened with other coins in history, proving that the mint was not immune to such mistakes. And if a 1945 penny was struck with mismatched dies or with a die featuring an older engraving style, it would be one of the rarest Lincoln cents ever discovered. And then we enter the topic of misaligned dies, weak strikes, shifted collars, and planchets that were either too thick, too thin, improperly annealed, or contaminated with other metals, each of these errors capable of amplifying a coin's rarity and pushing its desirability higher. And collectors love to imagine a 1945 wheat penny that contains several of these errors simultaneously, a combination so unlikely that it seems almost unbelievable. Yet history has shown that coins with multiple errors can and do exist, especially during high-stress, high-volume minting periods like the end of World War II, and that speculative layering of mistakes is what leads some collectors to estimate values as high as $41 million for a perfectly preserved specimen exhibiting extreme doubling, off-metal composition, transitional striking, repunched mint marks, and severe die deterioration, all visible to the naked eye, creating a coin that appears almost surreal, like something the mint would have immediately destroyed if they had caught it in time. But because production was frantic and workers were overwhelmed, it is entirely possible that a coin of this nature escaped unnoticed into circulation, only to disappear into the pockets, jars, or drawers of someone who never realized what they possessed. And those who study the patterns of minting errors know that some rarities take decades to surface, often emerging from inherited collections, estate sales, or unexpected discoveries made by people with no prior knowledge of coin collecting, and that adds to the mystery and magic surrounding the 1945 wheat penny legend, because every collector knows that the greatest treasures are often still out there waiting to be found. And among the most fascinating possibilities is that some 1945 pennies were struck during moments when the mint was experimenting with polishing methods, resulting in mirror-like surfaces that resemble proof coins even though they were never intended to be proofs. And when such an anomalous surface is combined with any of the aforementioned errors, the coin becomes something so unique that collectors will pay astronomical sums just for the privilege of owning it. And then there is the theory involving mispunched dates resulting from die reuse, where the number May 5th have been punched over a faint trace of the number 4 or even a repunched 5, creating a layered date structure so unusual that it becomes instantly desirable. And some claim to have seen 1945 cents with doubling that creates the illusion of a shadowy second date beneath the primary one, further fueling beliefs that rare varieties exist. And beyond these documented and speculative errors, some enthusiasts imagine the possibility that a handful of coins were struck on foreign planchets since the US Mint was producing coinage for other countries during wartime, which means the wrong planchet could easily have slipped into the production line and resulted in a 1945 cent weighing differently, sounding different, and aging differently from the standard composition. And foreign planchet errors have always commanded huge premiums at auction due to their extreme rarity, and if one such coin were authenticated today with clear, undeniable evidence of being struck on an unexpected composition, its value could soar beyond $30 or even $40 million, especially if combined with the visual drama of doubling, die clashing, or off-center striking. And collectors argue that the story does not end with physical errors alone because the historical context of 1945 adds its own layer of significance, as the final year of the war represented an emotional turning point for the country, and coins minted during this time are symbolic artifacts of resilience, transformation, and national rebirth. And when a coin carries both emotional and numismatic weight, its value is not only measured by rarity but by symbolic meaning, giving it an almost museum-level appeal. And as stories circulate about a rumored perfect specimen that combines multiple major errors, flawless preservation, and a mysterious origin story, the mythical $41 million figure continues to appear in conversations among collectors who believe that somewhere, tucked away in a forgotten box or inherited set of coins, lies a 1945 wheat penny so rare that it defies pricing logic. Next. Today, as we dive into another incredible story from the fascinating world of rare coins, where tiny pieces of metal can turn into unbelievable fortunes, and today's journey takes us deep into the unexpected rise of the 1951 wheat penny, a coin that most people would pass by without a second glance but which in certain rare and extraordinary cases has been rumored to command an astonishing value of up to $21 million because of the unique combination of errors, mistakes, unusual production conditions, and improbable circumstances that have transformed a simple 1-cent piece into a numismatic legend. And as we explore how a coin minted in an era of simplicity, post-war rebuilding, and mass production could possibly reach such astronomical value, we'll walk through the extraordinary possibilities that collectors examine, the kinds of minting accidents that can give birth to multimillion-dollar rarities, the mysterious conditions under which certain coins survive untouched, the unexpected variations that only experts can detect, and the way history, demand, scarcity, and human fascination all combine to produce something that seems impossible at first glance, because the 1951 wheat penny, while a common date in its regular form, becomes a completely different story when errors enter the picture. Errors that may include dramatic off-center strikes where the image of Lincoln is pushed aside in a way that captures the moment of a mechanical slip inside the mint's presses, or double die varieties where the doubling of letters, numbers, or Lincoln's profile creates a mesmerizing layered appearance that is both a mistake and a masterpiece of unintended craftsmanship, or planchet errors in which the wrong metal, wrong thickness, or improperly prepared blanks were accidentally fed into the machines during a transitional period when leftover materials from previous years could lead to coins being struck on steel planchets, bronze planchets of varying compositions, or foreign coin planchets that somehow found their way into the presses, creating anomalies so rare that collectors would spend decades searching for even a trace of their existence. And in the realm of coin collecting, rarity is king, but rarity alone isn't enough. It must be coupled with demand, fascination, and the allure of a story that seems almost mythic. And that is where the 1951 wheat penny's journey becomes even more intriguing, because this particular year in U.S. Mint history was marked by millions of coins being struck in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. And with such enormous numbers, the idea of one coin breaking free from the ocean of ordinary cents and becoming a multi-million-dollar treasure seems outrageous, yet it is precisely that contrast between the common and the impossible that fuels passion and imagination among collectors, because in the enormous numbers produced, there is always the faint possibility of an extraordinary outlier being born, a coin created by the perfect storm of mishap, misalignment, mechanical failure, or overlooked experimental material. And when a coin like that survives untouched for decades, kept hidden in a jar, passed down unintentionally in a family, or discovered by a curious collector who recognizes something that others do not, its story takes on a life of its own. And that's how legends begin, because among the most valuable possibilities for the 1951 wheat penny are dramatic minting errors like double denomination strikes in which a penny is accidentally struck on an already struck coin of another denomination, creating a one-of-a-kind hybrid piece that would immediately become a numismatic sensation, or extremely high-grade pieces preserved in almost perfect condition despite the fact that most pennies of the time were spent, scratched, tossed in drawers, or circulated heavily, and the few that escaped wear, perhaps kept as souvenirs, perhaps sealed away by mistake, have become time capsules of 1951, showcasing sharp relief, strong luster, and details so crisp that they astonish even seasoned experts. And then there are the coins struck on leftover wartime steel planchets, a phenomenon that occurred in 1943 but with lingering materials and occasional mix-ups, could theoretically result in a rare 1951 penny being struck on a steel blank, a discovery so improbable and so spectacular that if confirmed, it would instantly become one of the most valuable wheat pennies ever known. And this combination of scarcity, speculation, mysterious origin, and the thrill of the unknown is what pushes values from reasonable to extraordinary, because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying a story, a moment in history, a physical anomaly that represents a glitch in the massive machinery of the United States Mint. And the 1951 wheat penny has just enough room within its historical context, minting processes, and documented inconsistencies to allow for the possibility, however remote, of such a spectacular error existing. And once even the rumor of such a coin begins circulating among collectors, discussions grow, interest rises, rarity amplifies, and a theoretical value of $21 million begins to make sense in the world of elite numismatics where wealthy buyers, private collectors, museums, and investment groups compete for ownership of the rarest objects they can find. And the 1951 penny's potential value is also tied to its symbolism, representing the golden era of the wheat penny, a design beloved for generations, a piece of Americana, a link to post-World War II optimism, and a reminder of how even in the midst of ordinary life, extraordinary things can be created unintentionally. And just as the 1951 minting process relied on massive mechanical operations, human oversight, and complex logistical coordination, each of those steps presented opportunities for misfeeds, misalignments, improperly mixed alloys, overpolished dies, mismatched die sets, and countless other small cracks in the system through which a legendary era coin could escape. And some collectors have reported seeing examples with unusually strong doubling on the obverse lettering, extremely severe off-center strikes approaching 90%, die cracks forming bold lightning-like patterns across Lincoln's portrait, repunched mint marks that show evidence of multiple stamping attempts, or even coins where the fields and devices appear oddly distorted due to die collapse or metal flow issues, each type of error adding to the mystique and fueling speculation about hidden rarities still waiting to be discovered. And as we journey further into these possibilities, it becomes clear why stories of 1951 wheat pennies valued at $21 million have captured imaginations around the world, because the hunt itself is part of the value. The idea that somewhere in an old jar, a forgotten envelope, or a family inheritance sits a coin so rare, so bizarre, so historically significant that it could turn an ordinary person into an instant millionaire, and in this sense, the 1951 wheat penny becomes more than a coin. It becomes a symbol of discovery, of chance, of the hidden treasures that can hide in plain sight, and the more collectors imagine the thrill of uncovering such a piece, the more the story grows, and with every retelling, the legend expands, and as we wrap our minds around how these rare errors, minting anomalies, metal composition mistakes, and survival quirks come together to form the idea of a $21 million penny, it becomes clear that the value isn't just about rarity but about the intersection of possibility, history, craftsmanship, accident, and human fascination, and that's what keeps collectors searching, examining, learning, and dreaming. Because the world of coin collecting is full of surprises, and the 1951 wheat penny stands as a shining example of how even the smallest object can carry the biggest stories. And if you enjoyed this incredible deep dive into the surprising value and extraordinary potential of the 1951 wheat penny and want to explore more fascinating stories of rare coins, hidden treasures, and unexpected fortunes, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more amazing coin adventures ahead. Today we are diving deep into one of the most surprising and fascinating tales in American numismatics, the unbelievable story of how a simple 1946 wheat penny, a coin millions of Americans once spent without a thought, has become the subject of rumors, excitement, and jaw-dropping speculation about a value reaching as high as $13 million. And while that number sounds almost impossible for a coin minted in the tens of millions during the post-war period, collectors and enthusiasts have been captivated by the idea that certain mistakes, rare minting errors, and one-of-a-kind anomalies could transform an ordinary Lincoln cent into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. So today we are going to explore every possibility, every potential error, and every hidden detail that could contribute to such an unbelievable value, and we will walk through the historical context of the 1946 penny, the fallout from the war years, the transition of metal compositions, the mistakes that occasionally slipped through the minting process when quality control was still recovering from wartime pressure, and the unique circumstances that might cause a single surviving example with extraordinary flaws to become priceless to the right collector. Because when you think about the end of World War II, the United States Mint was in a period of rapid change and adjustment, shifting from wartime steel cents back to the more traditional bronze alloy, juggling massive public demand and equipment that had been strained for years, creating the perfect conditions for unusual errors to happen. And even though millions of 1946 wheat pennies rolled out of Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, only a tiny handful might contain the type of minting mistake so dramatic, so visually striking, or so historically significant that they could elevate the coin from a simple copper cent to a multi-million-dollar artifact. And one of the most talked about possibilities is that the 1946 penny could have been struck on a leftover steel planchet from the 1943 cents, because although the mint officially ended steel cent production in 1943, leftover steel planchets were found and mistakenly used in both 1944 and 1945, making those raw planchet strikes worth huge amounts. So the idea that a 1946 penny could exist on a steel or transitional zinc-coated steel planchet immediately fires the imagination of collectors, because if only one such piece survived, it would already be one of the greatest and most valuable mint errors of the 20th century, potentially commanding millions at auction. And then there is the possibility of a 1946 penny struck on a foreign planchet, something the US Mint occasionally did during that era when it produced coins for multiple countries. And if a planchet intended for a foreign coin slipped into the supply for the 1946 cents, the resulting coin would likely have odd weight, color, or thickness, and such errors, especially when unique, are hugely valuable to advanced collectors, further fueling speculation about legendary multi-million-dollar 1946 examples. And beyond wrong planchets, there are double die errors, the kind that became famous with coins like the 1955 double die or the 1972 double die. And although no widely recognized double die of that magnitude is known for 1946, the possibility exists that an extremely dramatic double die could have been struck in extremely low numbers and never widely circulated, maybe sitting in a private collection, tucked away in an old coin jar, or discovered only recently in a roll someone inherited from a relative. And the idea of extreme doubling on the date or the Liberty lettering would be exactly the type of error that could push collectors into bidding wars reaching into the millions, especially if the coin shows bold spread, clean lines, and is unlike anything else ever recorded for that year. And then we have off-center strikes, broad strikes, misaligned dies, die cracks, and cut breaks. each of which can add serious value. But imagine an off-center error so dramatic that more than half the design is missing, yet the coin remains in mint state condition, preserved somehow in a bank bag for decades, or a giant retained cut that destroys half of Lincoln's portrait in a way never seen before on any other wheat penny, making it essentially a one-of-one minting accident, and the rarity factor skyrockets. Which leads us to talk about condition, because for any coin to reach values in the millions, especially a common date wheat penny like the 1946, the coin would need to be in extraordinary condition, far beyond typical circulation wear, meaning a coin kept untouched, shiny, glowing with its original red luster, something graded at the highest levels like MS 68 or MS 69, grades so rare that even modern coins struggle to achieve them. And when you combine a nearly perfect condition with a dramatic minting mistake, you get the type of numismatic storm that pulls collectors from all over the world into intense competition, driving prices higher and higher. And even though most 1946 pennies are worth only a few cents, there are legendary stories of rare coins emerging from unlikely places, like old coffee cans, attic boxes, forgotten rolls inside dresser drawers, and these stories fuel the belief that truly extraordinary pieces may still be hidden away, waiting to be discovered. And this sense of mystery, the possibility that an unknown survivor exists, has kept the rumor alive that a 1946 wheat penny could indeed be worth more than $13 million, especially if it has the perfect combination of rarity, error, beauty, condition, and historical importance. And looking deeper into minting history, the machinery used in 1946 was still recovering from heavy wartime use, meaning damaged or worn dies were sometimes pushed beyond their ideal lifespan, which could cause unusual distortions, inconsistent strikes, or even extremely rare die breaks that form unique shapes on the coin's surface, some resembling letters or symbols, which collectors absolutely love. And then there is the possibility of repunched mint marks, particularly for Denver and San Francisco coins, where the mint marks were still being punched by hand, and variations like RPMs can become extremely collectible. But imagine an RPM so dramatic, so exaggerated, that it becomes one of the boldest in wheat penny history, and then imagine that coin surviving in flawless condition, instantly multiplying the value beyond anything typical. And all of this, the speculation, the possibilities, the errors, the mystery, feeds into the mythos of the 1946 wheat penny and why some collectors believe a unique example could reach astronomical value, because the combination of post-war minting conditions, leftover planchets, potential transitional errors, manual mint mark punching, and imperfect quality control created real opportunities for once-in-a-generation mistakes. And when you add the possibility that such a coin has never been publicly revealed, perhaps held privately for decades, the imagined value skyrockets even further. And then we can explore another angle, the collector psychology behind rare coins, because scarcity and story are powerful forces. And if a single 1946 wheat penny existed with a truly unprecedented error, the kind never before recorded, the story alone would fuel bidding wars, since collectors are not only buying a coin, they are buying history, owning a piece of the minting process that went wrong in the most extraordinary way, and they are buying exclusivity, the right to say they own the only example in the world. And in this environment, even common coins with extraordinary errors become multi-million-dollar items, especially when auction houses know how to promote rarity, and news headlines draw global attention, further increasing the perceived value. And with all these factors combined, you can see how people become captivated by the idea that a 1946 wheat penny, normally worth almost nothing, might instead be one of the rarest and most valuable coins ever discovered. And while the majority of 1946 pennies remain ordinary, the lure of the unknown, the rare, the unique, and the spectacular keeps treasure hunters searching, keeps collectors digging through rolls, and keeps the hobby alive with excitement, because anyone, anywhere, at any time could be holding the single exceptional example that defies all expectations. And with that sense of discovery and excitement, thank you for watching. And if you enjoy exploring the hidden stories and incredible values behind ordinary coins, make sure to like, subscribe, and join us again as we uncover more unbelievable treasures hiding in plain sight.